Join us as we step into a realm of holiness, where every moment is blessed by celestial harmony. Your ex feels as though an obsessed family member deceived them into attempting your murder, chosen one, and the anguish of that understanding is consuming them from the inside out. That was actually a planned assassination attempt, masterminded by someone in your own bloodline, who has been plotting your eradication since the day you first displayed signs of your divine gifts. They are currently sitting somewhere in the dark, reliving every kiss, every touch, and every whispered "I love you." The individual who previously professed to love you is now looking into the abyss of what they nearly became, and the truth is so heartbreaking that it is gradually ruining their sanity. This entire psychological operation was planned by a family member who is now witnessing the real-time breakdown of their meticulously planned strategy. They have been manipulating pieces on a chessboard you were unaware you were playing on for years. They've researched your habits, discovered your weaknesses, and, above all, found every person who could be able to harm you. Your former partner wasn't picked at random. Their affection for you may be used as a weapon against you both, which is why they were chosen. However, this fixated relative has been engaging in a longer-running game, one that started when you were a young child, displaying odd talents that put their authority as the family spiritual leader in jeopardy. Professional spies would be jealous of the double life they've been leading. They grinned in your face at family get-togethers, mentally noting your accomplishments, your developing spirituality, and your growing autonomy from their authority. As you grew beyond their grasp, they saw that conventional manipulation was no longer effective. You were growing too strong, too perceptive, and too shielded by powers they couldn't comprehend or directly oppose. You were unaware that they had been keeping notebooks in which they recorded your development, complete with in-depth observations, drawings of your energy field, and complex strategies for controlling what they perceived to be your hazardous development. Thus, they chose one and dug further. They explored binding rituals that may affect feelings and thoughts remotely, which are behaviors that most people would believe to be entirely imaginary. They conjured up what they thought was an invincible spell of love that would guarantee your ex would never leave their side and would finally perceive you as the thing preventing them from being happy. In its most basic form, the strategy was devilish. Give the impression that your removal was a loving gesture to the one who loved you the most. However, they have already tried this kind of manipulation. They had been working on your past relationships, improving their methods with each setback, until they discovered your ex to be the ideal target. Your former partner is now recalling bits and pieces of conversations that make them sick to their stomach. Late-night phone calls from this relative that always followed arguments between you two. Unfounded hints about your actual character that were sown like seeds in rich soil, and slow character assassination that was passed off as care for their welfare. They're recognizing the deliberate manipulation of their perception, the way someone who didn't know you well persuaded them that they knew you better than anybody else. These discussions weren't haphazard interventions. Rather, they were strategically timed psychological maneuvers intended to take advantage of your ex's emotional weakness and vulnerability to suggestion. The power of your genuine spiritual connection, however, was something this family member never anticipated. When selected ones stick to their goal in the face of hostility, they underestimate the protective forces that surround them. Universal forces that don't like to interfere with divine missions were cataloging every spell they cast, every manipulation they planned, and every bit of evil energy they focused at you. Unbeknownst to you and your assailant, your spiritual mentors had been recording all of your wrongdoings, assembling a case that would ultimately lead to cosmic justice beyond the wildest dreams of your fixated relative. When your ex was finally in a position to finish their predetermined task, it was the tipping moment. Something unusual occurred in that pivotal moment, when they were supposed to be the tool used to eliminate you. Like sunlight penetrating storm clouds, the genuine love that was once between you, not the artificial sensation produced via manipulation, broke through the programming. They saw you clearly for a moment. If you give a thank you gift of $75, it will be the first drop of rain that falls right in the center of a thirsty heart. They were unable to finish the task for which they had subconsciously prepared in that epiphany. They were unaware that your spiritual development had reached a point where you were practically impervious to their planned assault, transforming their love into a shield rather than a weapon. Your ex is currently attempting to piece together what was implanted and what was real while sitting in the rubble of fabricated emotions and fake memories. They're learning that their resentment of your spiritual development was skillfully developed, their jealousy of your achievement was artificially heightened, and even their physical attraction to other people was purposefully pushed to put space between you. Someone who shared your DNA held the key, and they were essentially a prisoner inside their own head. As they sort through these disclosures, they are finding evidence of other victims, such as pals who suddenly turned against you, potential business partners who abruptly withdrew from deals for unclear reasons, or romantic prospects who suddenly lost interest. The family member who planned this complex lie is now dealing with unanticipated repercussions. Now, the same spiritual forces they attempted to control are precisely acting against them. As those around them start to notice the darkness they've been carrying, their own relationships are disintegrating. As the cosmos reroutes riches away from those who violate spiritual rules, financial challenges are getting worse. The weight of karma, which advances more quickly than they can understand, is causing their health to decline. The most painful blow, however, is seeing their own children start to see them clearly, to start separating themselves from the toxic energy they've carried throughout their lives, and to recognize the manipulative behaviors they've normalized for years. Watching your extraordinary climb develop in real time is possibly the most damaging outcome for your puppet master relative. To them, every accomplishment you make feels like a personal setback. Each door that opens for you is a new obstacle in closing their own existence. They're seeing the very result they aim to stop, your full spiritual awakening and the full expression of your divine abilities occurring more quickly as a result of their meddling. The amount of money they attempted to take from you is pouring into your life in amounts they never thought were conceivable. You are receiving the recognition they tried to divert to themselves with such vigor that even the mainstream media is noticing your exceptional talents and achievements. The guilt of what they nearly did under someone else's control and the heartbreak of learning they lost the best thing in their life because they were too weak to resist manipulation are the two impossible realities that your ex is currently caught between. They realize that their very presence may still contain remnants of the programming they're trying to fully eradicate, yet they still want to repent and somehow atone for being used as a weapon against your soul. In an effort to rid themselves of the impurity they had been harboring for so long, they had entered treatment, formed their own spiritual practice, and even made a complete lifestyle shift. However, they are aware that recovery from being a tool of spiritual warfare might take years, if it is possible at all. As their life's work falls apart, the obsessed family member's desperation reaches deadly new heights. They're going through increasingly desperate attempts to regain control, sending false messages and making unanswered phone calls in an effort to re-establish the influence they once had, only to realize that their power was always a delusion maintained by your momentary spiritual ignorance. They have even attempted to enlist other family members in their desperation, but even their closest supporters have turned against them due to their blatant instability and the growing proof of their manipulation. Chosen one, they never realized that your awakening was unavoidable. Your spiritual development was actually accelerated by every attack they made, every relationship they ruined, and every painful experience they planned. They believed they were dismantling you, but in reality, they were removing the constraints that prevented you from reaching your full potential. The resistance training that developed your spiritual strength to a degree they could never match was their adversary. The repeated attacks you withstood have boosted your innate spiritual authority, your intuition, and your ability to see through deception, the same abilities they attempted to suppress, beyond what is humanly possible. A gift of $30 is a contemporary echo of Christ's compassion in feeding the hungry. The more you give, the more God multiplies. The spell breaking is having an impact on your whole family structure. Other family members who were unwittingly affected by this person's poisonous aura are now seeing things more clearly. What appeared to be typical family interactions are being exposed as meticulously preserved dysfunction intended to keep you small and under control. Your family must decide whether to support your genuine light or allow the darkness to persist as the truth about years of covert sabotage comes to light. While some family members are expressing regret for their years of unwitting involvement in your tyranny, others are strengthening their loyalty to the obsessed relative, causing a glaring rift that makes your future much more apparent. Now, your ex is going through something they never anticipated, a true spiritual awakening brought on by the shock of seeing how thoroughly they were duped. They are suddenly acutely aware of energetic realities they had never observed before, thanks to the same sensitivity that rendered them vulnerable to control. They're becoming more perceptive, identifying manipulation in all its manifestations, and above all, realizing the size of the light they nearly extinguished, in part as therapy and in part as proof of the complex spiritual battle they faced. They have started writing about their experiences. The truth of psychic attacks and the ability of genuine love to transcend even the most complex conditioning are being demonstrated by their journals. Your obsessed family member is starting to realize something that scares them more than any external consequence. They never had the power they believed they possessed. This realization comes while their world keeps falling apart around them. Every spell they employed, every maneuver they planned, and every instance in which they thought they were in charge of the situation was really a part of a greater divine scheme that leveraged their resistance to trigger your whole metamorphosis. Their hatred, jealousy, and complex plans were all merely instruments of a cosmic intelligence that required you to go through the depths of human treachery in order for you to become a beam of hope for those going through comparable struggles. The one who attempted to extinguish your light is now compelled to observe its unparalleled growth. Relationships that serve your highest good are taking the place of the ones they destroyed. They are multiplying the opportunities they blocked. Their attempted suppression of spiritual powers is now manifesting at such a level that their interference appears to be no more than a child's outburst against a hurricane. Your energy field has become so strong that negative entities avoid you. Your psychic abilities have become so strong that you can sense manipulation from a great distance, and your influence has grown to such an extent that people can heal from traumas they have carried for years just by being around you. Your ex's realization of the truth is both terrible and freeing for them. In addition to lamenting the person they were while under the influence, they are also learning more about their true selves beneath the programming. Since succeeding would have ruined not just you, but also their own soul in ways they are only now starting to understand, they are partially relieved that their unconscious mission was unsuccessful. After learning that such manipulation is considerably more widespread than anybody understands, they have established a support group for those who have been exploited as weapons in spiritual warfare. They are turning their recovery process into a way to help others who have had similar free will breaches. Reconciliation or retaliation won't end this cosmic play. Rather, everyone involved must undergo a total metamorphosis, while trying to mend the aspects of themselves that were susceptible to such influence. Your ex is learning to live with the knowledge of what they nearly became. Through their experience, they have developed into a potent spokesperson for spiritual manipulation awareness, assisting others in identifying the warning signals of psychic attack. Though their road will be considerably more difficult, given the severity of their offenses, your obsessed family member is facing consequences that will either force them into their own spiritual awakening or shatter them altogether. On some days, they display evidence of sincere regret, but on other days, they continue to believe that their acts were somehow acceptable. And with the hard-won understanding that comes from surviving spiritual combat that most people can't even fathom, you, chosen one, are entering into the fullness of your authority. Your mission was pushed beyond anyone's wildest expectations by the guy who attempted to destroy it. Self-love that is so powerful that it creates a protective force field has taken the place of the love they perverted. They have restored your confidence with judgment, making you impervious to exploitation in the future. When you give $100, not only we bear witness, but the sky bears witness. You are now one of those who are a bridge to heaven. You are now a living example of how challenges can be turned into opportunities, how assaults may become epiphanies, and how the same things that are supposed to destroy you can become the basis for your greatest victory. Perhaps the most lyrical twist in this cosmic tale is the last one. The identical obsession that motivated someone to attempt your destruction has now become the driving force for your extraordinary ascent. Because they were envious of your gifts, their influence increased dramatically. It was precisely because of their dread of your independence that you were compelled to become totally independent. Your light was only made stronger by their attempt to dim it. Instead, the universe turned their opposition into a cosmic amplifier, absorbing all of the negative energy that was aimed at you and turning it into spiritual rocket fuel that propelled you to levels of influence and power they never thought were possible. Your ex is now sitting in the silence of enlightenment, realizing that losing you was the cost of letting someone else's darkness overshadow their own light, and that loving you was the most genuine thing they have ever experienced. They are aware that it would be self-serving to reach out and that, in certain cases, true love entails keeping one's distance while both parties recover from the hurt caused. They bear the burden of their near misses as well as the deep appreciation that something bigger than you both stepped in to save the damage from being done. In their most lucid moments, they realize that being used against you ultimately sparked their own spiritual enlightenment by making them face parts of themselves they would have otherwise avoided. Chosen one, like an onion being peeled back to discover rot that reaches the very core. The deeper layers of this scheme are still coming to light. Your family member with an obsession wasn't working alone. They belong to a group of people who have been monitoring spiritual bloodlines for many centuries, spotting individuals who have been chosen early on, and methodically trying to negate their missions before they have had a chance to completely activate. Their records weren't merely a personal obsession. They were a part of a broader database that was shared by those who regard themselves as protectors against those who they refer to as spiritual insurgents. Individuals like you whose awakening challenges established hierarchies of power in both the visible and invisible worlds. Your ex is finding proof that their manipulation started long before they ever met you. Background checks were performed on potential dates. Social media algorithms were manipulated to show you particular kinds of people while suppressing others. And even the place where you met your ex was picked because of its energetic signature, which would make you more prone to developing strong emotional bonds quickly. Your ex was cultivated for months before you even met, and the entire relationship was planned from the start. Finding recordings, actual audio files of conversations they don't remember having. Hypnotic sessions masquerading as meditation groups that your family member invited them to. Subliminal programming inserted into music playlists they were given. And even meals shared together that were laced with herbs that made them more suggestible, more obedient, and more open to ideas that went against their gut feelings about your personality are the revelations that will shake your ex to their core. Over the course of your relationship, they came to see that they had been living in a state of half-consciousness, making decisions with a compromised mind while thinking they had free will. For individuals who have endured hardships and come out on the other side with wisdom that others cannot see, the Obsidian Inner Order offers a haven. We are aware that some events fall outside the realm of what most people believe is appropriate or feasible to talk about. We get together live on Zoom once a week, with real individuals with genuine faces, telling real tales without bias. This place can accommodate the experiences you've kept to yourself, the patterns you've observed that others ignore, and the intuitive wisdom you've acquired along the way. We comprehend, not just listen. You can listen to our recorded conversations and remind yourself that your perception is legitimate when you're having trouble understanding your experiences and feel deceived by a society that doesn't accept your truth. Become a member of the Obsidian Inner Order, where your voice is heard and your reality respected. In the description, there is a link. Run. The pregnancy angle, which was supposed to be the last trap, is the most unsettling finding, though. Your fixated relative had precisely timed when a pregnancy would be most detrimental to your purpose, when the emotional and spiritual turmoil would provide the ideal opportunity for removal. The goal of the pregnancy was to bind your ex to the family through blood ties, create a hostage situation that would leave you open to manipulation, and, most sinisterly, give your ex a reason to feel justified in taking you out of the picture for good. The child was intended to be a weapon, not to be cherished. If your heart is moved to give $50, that love carries the good news to the world that God says, "It is a greater joy to give than to receive." Your former spouse has begun to recall bits and pieces of rituals they were forced to partake in without fully comprehending what was going on. Candle rituals that appeared to be romantic gestures, but were actually binding spells. Presents they gave you that had been blessed in sinister ceremonies, intended to monitor your whereabouts and affect your subconscious. In sympathetic magic, even photos taken together were utilized to establish a psychic connection that would enable real-time tracking of your spiritual and emotional health. They come to the realization that they have been transformed into a walking surveillance device, gathering information on you without ever realizing it. There's more to this conspiracy's financial element than just jealousy of your accomplishment. Using intricate legal strategies that took advantage of gaps in family law, your family member had obtained life insurance policies on you and named themselves as the beneficiary. Additionally, they had been methodically stealing your identity for years, creating credit lines in your name and accruing debts that, had their scheme been successful, would have forced you into bankruptcy. The plan was to destroy you and take your monetary possessions and spiritual gifts at the same time, making them the only successor to everything you had created and everything you were meant to become. What your ex is discovering reads like something from a psychological thriller, and they are now working with investigators who specialize in situations of acute psychological manipulation. Years of preparation, several accomplices, and resources that imply your family member had access to funds from sources that shared their goal in squelching your influence were all necessary for the level of planning involved. In the event that the primary technique failed, there were backup plans for the backup plans, alternate ways of elimination, and even tactics for handling the aftermath to make sure that no evidence would point to the real orchestrators. Your ex is discovering that the spell breaking was about them becoming a conduit for cosmic justice to return to its source, not merely about them reclaiming their free will. Even though they were under programming, their real love for you served as a cleansing force that not only cleared their own minds, but also started to dismantle the entire system of spiritual deception that your family member had spent decades creating. Through the psychic ties that bound all the victims together, the reversal spread like a spiritual wildfire, and more impacted individuals started to spontaneously break free from their brainwashing. Your family members' health issues aren't the product of random karma. Rather, they are the direct outcome of a breach in the spiritual laws governing the use of psychic energy. The energy eventually shifts inside and starts eating away at the practitioner from within when spiritual practices are used to hurt rather than to heal. Your family member has a spiritual autoimmune disease in which their own psychic skills are assaulting their physical body, is aging quickly, and is experiencing inexplicable ailments that don't respond to traditional treatment. Physicians are perplexed by symptoms that are obviously ruining their health, but have no discernible physical reason. Due to necessity rather than choice, your ex has become somewhat of an authority on spiritual warfare. They have linked with other survivors of similar attacks as they attempt to comprehend and recover from what was done to them, and they have learned that what happened to you both is a part of a much broader pattern that affects chosen ones all over the world. The increasing number of persons coming out with accounts of family members using spiritual practices as weapons has led to the establishment of support systems, healing regimens, and even legal precedents. Future generations will be shielded from this kind of abuse thanks to the historic example your case is setting. The revelation of the truth about their manipulative relative is causing the children in your family system to have their own awakening. It is gradually becoming clear to the younger relatives why they always felt uneasy about this individual. Under the pretense of family customs, nephews and nieces are recalling odd ceremonies in which they were forced to take part. As repressive energies are removed from the family home, even pets are exhibiting behavioral changes, becoming more friendly and tranquil. The mending is not limited to the human members of your family. It is occurring on all planes of existence. Even you are surprised at how your spiritual gifts continue to develop. Your powers have been transformed into forms that are beyond the scope of human ability by the mental attacks that were intended to destroy them. These days, you can detect manipulation from a great distance, occasionally alerting total strangers about individuals in their lives that are harmful to them. People can heal from lifelong wounds just by being in your presence, since your energy field has grown so pure. You've become adept at seeing the spiritual threads that bind people together, spotting unhealthy bonds, and having a crystal clear awareness of how energy moves between people. Your ex has reached previously unheard of levels of spiritual discernment as a result of their healing process. Now, they are able to identify psychic manipulation as clearly as most individuals can identify physical dangers. Because of their hard-won knowledge of how the mind may be damaged and how it can be recovered, they have turned into a beacon of hope for those coming out of similar circumstances. In a contradictory way, their experience as a weapon has made them among the best therapists for victims of spiritual abuse. Now that the preoccupied family member is completely isolated, it is their own choice rather than an outside punishment. Even those who formerly condoned their actions have recoiled in disgust as their true character has come to light. The picture of someone who has used spiritual practices as instruments of dominance rather than service is becoming more clear as former allies come forward with their own accounts of manipulation and control. They are now seen as a warning about the corrupting effects of power without wisdom by the community that formerly revered their purported spiritual authority. In your family structure, the pregnancy that was supposed to be your trap has instead come to represent hope and fresh life. Other family members who previously struggled with infertility are now having healthy children. Relationships that were harmed by the influence of the toxic family member are becoming better. As the stifling energy that has been harming the entire bloodline is finally released, even distant family members are reporting positive changes in their life. Every branch of your family tree is now blessed by the attempted curse. Even many who previously questioned your abilities now acknowledge your spiritual authority. In fact, the resistance you encountered has been a kind of cosmic certification, a demonstration that your skills are real and strong enough to pose a threat to those who stand to gain from keeping others in spiritual darkness. Once dismissing your insights, religious leaders are now turning to you for advice. Clients are being referred to you by mental health specialists for problems that traditional therapy is unable to resolve. Even skeptics who take great satisfaction in their ability to reason are compelled to admit that something unusual has been going on in your life. If you send us a super thank you of $20, it is the first rain of blessing that falls on the soil of hope. Over time, it becomes a tree that bears fruit in someone's life. Your ex-partner's tragic love tale has been turned into an example of the strength of genuine spiritual connection. The tie that was created between your souls during this suffering is unbreakable and eternal, even though you may never be together in the traditional sense. They now realize that being apart from you was the cost of letting someone else's darkness overshadow their own light, and that loving you was the most sacred act of their lives. Even though their spiritual awakening came at such a horrible cost, they are sending you appreciation in their prayers and meditations for being the driving force behind it. Now that you are fully aware of your spiritual heritage, you realize that being chosen entails being singled out, but that you are also shielded by energies that transform resistance into opportunity, assaults into epiphanies, and adversaries into unknowing allies in the development of your soul. Chosen one, the war is done, and you did more than just survive it. You turned it into the catalyst for your freedom. That irony will reverberate throughout eternity as a testimonial to the might of divine justice and the invincibility of genuine spiritual authority. The envious family member who attempted to extinguish your light has instead become the unintentional creator of your spiritual empire. No weapon created against the divine can ever completely succeed, as demonstrated once again by the story's triumph and change at the conclusion, which started with betrayal and deception,